So the guardian angel is an angel in Hebrew is a Malack. Malack. Malack means angel. It also means a messenger. So you have a human agents, human messengers, and the spiritual ones. According to the context, we know what is being spoken of, and the angel is there. He's a messenger, and often in the stories of Abraham, remember the stories of Abraham, of the forefathers, very often the angel appears to Abraham or to one of the others of the patriarchs, and he speaks to them, and then in the course of the speaking, it becomes apparent that God himself is actually speaking to him. So the angel, as if to say, initiates a meeting, and God himself takes over. And is so that is what there's a point of interest. And the people of Israel, when they came out of Egypt, they had been promised that God would send his angel before them. And this angel would have the name of God in him. See Exodus 23, verse 20, behold, I send an angel before you to keep you in the way and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him and obey his voice. Do not provoke him. We will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. If you indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and adversary to your adversaries. For my angel will go before you and bring you into the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, and I will cut them off. You shall not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do according to their works, but you shall utterly overthrow them and completely break down their sacred pillars. The angel would have the name of God in him. In effect, this meant that God himself would be speaking in a more direct manner through his angel than he would at another lower level. That is according to commentaries such as Nachmanides and Malbim that explain the Hebrew verses here. Later the people sinned. That was like these promise was given to them when they're coming out of Egypt. Later the people sinned with the golden calf. And God was angry with them. And he said he would send his angel before them. This time he met an angel at a lower level. Exodus 33 says, verse 1, beginning from verse 1, and the Lord said to Moses, depart and go up from here, you and the people whom you have brought out of the land of Egypt to the land of which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying to your descendants, I will give it, and I will send my angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanites and the Amorites and Hittites, the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, while I'll go up in your midst, lest I consume you on the way, for you are a stiff-necked people. And the Malbim, that is a Malbim 1800s, is a great commentator. He said in this case, the angel who was to go up with them was of a lower rank, was a lower level of the previous angel who had been with him, and he would be the equivalent of the angels who rule over other peoples. God says that he wants to send this angel before them instead of going himself in order to save them from his wrath. That is a people from his anger. That is a people were human. They had already committed idolatry once. They're liable to do so again. If the angel of lower rank were to lead them, then if they sinned, they would not be punished so severely. Why was that? And before we continue, we should note that Moses did not accept the proposition of this angel going before them. Moses pleaded with the Almighty, who accepted his request and agreed to go himself before the people. See Exodus 33, 12-23. And in Deuteronomy 14:2 says, for you are the holy people to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. And he also says, Deuteronomy 4:19, take heed lest you lift your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all the hosts of heaven, you feel driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord your God has given to all the peoples under the whole heaven as a heritage. The Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace out of Egypt to be his people and inheritance as you are to this day. And elsewhere we see that the angels are collated with the forces of heaven. And Isaiah speaks of Hillel ben Shachar. Hillel ben Shachar is translated as Lucifer in English translation. It's Lucifer, and he represents both a military power that actually existed in historical times, as well as a spiritual entity in the heavens. He speaks of him in Isaiah 14, how you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, Hero ben Shahar. How you are cut down to the ground, you will weaken the nations. We have said in your heart, I will ascend unto heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, the farther sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High, and you shall be brought down to hell, to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. And from this we see that the angels do exist, that angels have tasks. And you have good angels and bad angels, and angels are different rank for different attitudes, for different attributes of the Almighty, for different levels of guidance. Every nation has its own guardian angel who is responsible for that nation. In other words, every nation has a guardian angel over it. Isaiah speaks of the final judgment day when the Almighty will punish the earthly powers as well as the spiritual ones in heaven that are parallel to them. Isaiah 24:21, it's come to pass on that day that the Lord will punish on high the host of exalted ones. And he heard the kings of the earth. Daniel was told by an angel that either angel would have to fight with the prince of Persia and the prince of Javan, that is Greece. By prince is seen from the context, by prince it is intended a spiritual angelic being who represents a nation in heaven. See Daniel 10:20, then he said, do you know why I've come to you? And now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia, this angel of Persia. And when I have gone forth, indeed the prince of Greece will come. And Rabbi Moshe Luzzatto, who's actually a friend, a student of Rabbi Valley, whom we quoted before, also lived in Padua by Venice, northern Italy. He was also one of the greatest rabbis of recent times. He wrote books of great importance, such as Mesilat Yesharim and others, Turek Hashem. At all events, he says the rulership of the national guardian angels is less strict and less direct than that of God himself. That is, you either have God ruling over you or you have an angel ruling over you. And if you have an angel ruling over you, the presence of God is felt less. You are at a lower level, but if you sin, if you transgress, you'll be punished to a lot lesser degree. See, if God has distanced himself from the nation and rules them through intermediaries, and then they will not be punished if they worship intermediaries. Israel, on the other hand, will be punished because God himself rules over them. See, Amos 3, for you only have known of all the families of the earth, therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. Again, Amos 3, 2, for you only have known of all the families of the earth, therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. And tradition says that the angel Michael is the guardian angel of Israel. Michael was once the patron saint of England, but he was replaced by St. George. Later, for different reasons, Michael was also considered the patron of Russia, the guardian angel of Russia. But in Russia, we find few descendants amongst the Gentile nations. But we do find descendants of Israel amongst the Jews and the Zabotniks and the Khazars, who were of Israelite descent, and they lived in Russia. At all events, when the Israelites, getting back to the beginning, when the Israelites came out of Egypt and Moses went up to the mountain to receive the Torah, they feared that Moses had disappeared. They therefore asked Aaron to make Elohim instead of Moses. Now, get back into the story. I'll explain it to you. You probably already know this. We know the story of when the Jews, the Israelites, the Hebrews came out of Egypt, and they came before Mount Sinai. And Moses went up to receive the Torah. And he told them he'd be back after 40 days. And after 40 days, they miscalculated. They didn't know what he meant by 40 days. They saw he hadn't come back. So they asked Aaron to make them gods who would go up before them. Word translated as God in Hebrew is Elohim. The people saw he hadn't come back in time. They thought he'd gone away, disappeared. And they depended on him. They remember they were in the desert. They were in the desert. They had children, wives, children. And Moses, through Moses, they got the daily bread. He caused the manna to fall from heaven. And when they needed meat, he caused pheasants or some type of bird to come down. And he was guiding them on every little point, and they were entirely dependent upon him. And suddenly he's disappeared. So they went to Aaron, the brother of Moses, and they said, make for us Elohim, it says. translated as gods. For this man Moses, we don't know what has happened to him. And they say they want these gods to replace Moses. They're not saying they want gods to replace God. Moses, in effect, had been an intermediary. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi speaks of this. Other great rabbis also speak at length, explaining it according to the verses. They didn't ask for gods in place of God. They asked for gods. Elohim, the word Elohim in Hebrew can also mean not only gods, it can also mean great people, important people, judges. They wanted some type of intermediary between themselves and God to replace Moses, who had been intermediary for them. And Aaron agreed, and he tried to delay them. He asked them to give all their jewelry and so on, and he threw it in the fire. And he hoped that somehow or other he'd be able to put them off or dissuade them. And it didn't work. Something happened, and as if by black magic or something, a golden calf came out of the fire, and the people began to worship it. Originally, their original intention had been an intermediary between God and themselves, and someone or something to replace Moses. And then they got carried away and began attributing heavenly powers to this miraculous apparition, this miraculous golden calf, a bull calf that had appeared. They started worshipping it, and because of that, they were punished. And we have the story of the golden calf. After that, God said that he would send his angel before them to lead them into the land. He forgave them, but he said he would send his angel before them, and he, apparently, according to commentators, he intended that they should not be so close to him, because if they are close to God and they offend, they will be punished even more, and therefore not to expose them to his future wrath if they sin, and people are human, they sin, transgress, and they should commit adultery again. The anger of God would be even more great against them, and the Almighty didn't want this. He wanted to appoint an angel to lead them instead of him. But Moses didn't want it. Moses persuaded God to lead the people himself. That's what the verses say. This meant that the presence of the Almighty would always be close to the Israelites. It also meant that if and when they sinned, they would face severe punishment. So that is what they chose. That is what they had. Is what we find in Amos 3 verse 2 says, "You only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities." And we later find that the 10 tribes went into exile, and before going into exile, following their time of exile, they were divorced and disowned by the Almighty. See Jeremiah 3:8. Jeremiah 3:8. She saw that for all the adulteries of the faithless one Israel, I had sent her away with a decree of divorce. In other words, the Almighty divorced themselves from the 10 tribes. And henceforth they had the status of non-Jews, of non-Israelites, of heathen. And that is what Hosea says in 1:10 when he refers to them as Lo Ami, not my people. And not another names connoting similar attributes. Also in the Talmud mentions that. The 10 tribes went in the ways of the nations around them, and were, as if to say, cut off from belonging from the Almighty, from having such a close association with God. Similar to what had happened to them after the sin of the golden calf. And what is, from Jewish thought, what are the imputations from this? What do we learn from this? That the 10 tribes have the status of non-Jews, non-Israelites, and when they return, as Hosea speaks about, they will be reaccepted as Israelites. And once again, they will have to keep the law. This is how we understand the simple meaning of the Bible. But at the moment, they do not have that status. Therefore, less is required of them. And they can worship God according to most opinions, or many opinions. They can worship God through an intermediary. They can be, in simple terms, they can become Christians. Whereas for a Jew to become Christians, it is a very serious offense. A Jew cannot become a Christian. In other words, you cannot become a Christian without being punished by God Almighty. Whereas a Gentile can, because the less is expected of him, and so too less is expected of the 10 tribes, because they are, as if to say, in a spiritual sense, at a lower level, but they have a task of their own to fulfill, which is just as important or equally important, and which is more suited to them. And in the future, the two halves, the two different attributes will come together, and that the 10 tribes will become equal to the Jews, but also have to worship God in the same way as the Jews do. And how this is to come about, we will find different opinions, and all of it. This is worth knowing. With knowing interest in the 10 tribes, interested in the Jews, you would like to see how Jews see things, as Jews view things, and it's worth your while to be aware of this, whether you agree or disagree with it. It is something to be aware of, that this possibility exists, and it is it corresponds with the indications in the Bible. So, is anyone any comments to say? Any questions?
What is the wall that's separating?
No, I can't hear you.
Yeah. Like before, you mentioned there was a wall separating Ephraim from Judah. What is that wall?
It's a wall. It's a spiritual. There's a barrier. Barrier between Judah and the 10 tribes.
That's right.
And that Almighty has placed a barrier between the two.
Well, what do you think?
But in the same stage in the future, this barrier will be broken. And then we have what in other talks, I'll give more details about, according to prophecy, according to symbols and meaning of prophecy of Zechariah as well, what will happen in the end times, how things will develop, and what will happen to both sides, to both Judah and to Joseph. And this will become more pertinent, more comprehensible. But all events, this is what the sources say. This is what the Bible seems to say. Zechariah says it according to the understanding of the Hebrew. Zechariah says that the stick that was broken in two, or one of the sticks, represents a barrier between Judah and Joseph, between the 10 tribes and the Jews. And this barrier is preventing the two from coming together, from having a spiritual rapport between the two. And the stick will be broken, the barrier will be broken, and then that will enable their unification.
What do you think that this barrier is?
I don't know. I know it's represented by a stick, by you know as much as me now, almost.
A big stick,
on that point. Okay.
I have a question.
Maybe on another point you know much more, but that's what we have.
Last week you mentioned that Judah needs the 10 tribes.
Yes.
And I understand how the 10 tribes need Judah. My question is that, can you go into what you know as far as why, for reconciliation, why does Judah need the 10 tribes?
So just, according to the sources, first of all, it appears that the full revelation of God needs the two be together. In order to receive the full force of holiness from God Almighty, he wants to let the 12 tribes be together, be as one group. To reveal himself to them in a miraculous way, as it described in the prophets. And the 12 tribes have to be together, have to be unified at some level, conscious of each other. So that's what it says. And also on the spiritual level, we also could say that there are prophecies. We'll see also Zechariah speaks of them. Says in the end times, Judah will be a very powerful country, and that Joseph will also be a very powerful country, and they will have trials and tribulations parallel to each other before they come together, realize that each needs the other. Apparently also for geopolitical reasons that will become apparent at some future stage. The forces of the 10 tribes and the forces of Judah will need to reunite to save themselves from external enemies. And even now we see that to some degree. even though the givers, who are the givers? First it was Britain, after that France, today the USA. The USA is helping Israel, helps the state of Israel, but also interferes in the state of Israel to some degree. This help comes at a price. We have to abide by certain general rules of conduct that America deems necessary for all civilized peoples, which may not be pertinent to us, but nevertheless, on the whole, America helps us, America sustains us, America protects us, and in some way or other, Israel also gives back some of it. Israel being here in this portion of the earth, it helps America. It helps America project its power over all the earth, and in different ways. Also, Israeli scientists. There are a lot of different ways how America helping the Jews and the state of Israel. That helps America, but that is not why America does it.